Welcome to Desert Island Thames. With me today is one of the men who helped save Celtic from financial ruin. He was the financial advisor who organised the Fergus McCann takeover. David Lowe, how are you?
I'm very well, Billy. How are you?
I'm not too bad.
Excellent.
So what was life like for the young David Lowe growing up?
Well, I was brought up in Clarkston, which at the time, which would be the early 60s, was very much separate from Glasgow. It was almost like a village. There weren't too many Celtic people or Catholic people there for that matter when we moved there. There wasn't a great big primary school, St Joseph's, that you've got just now. It was just a little village school attached to a little village church at Clarkston Toll. So being a Catholic and being a Celtic fan was very much a minority. It was very waspy at the time. The only Catholics by and large that stayed there were from Busby in the scheme. So I had quite a rough time, if the truth be told, growing up as a Catholic and a Celtic fan in Clarkston in the early 60s. I do remember that I had to walk past Carlside School and I was called a Fenian bastard on more than one occasion. And indeed, when my parents sent me to St Aloysius, I promptly became a snobby Fenian bastard. So I quite enjoyed that moniker, if the truth be told, because it's true.
So we'll take you on to your first song just now. What was that and why did you pick it?
Well, there's two things that have been constant in my life, and that's like Celtic Football Club, as well as family, of course. The Celtic Football Club, football in general, and music. Well, that's three things, not two things. They're all important. So I grew up with. I get involved with Celtic then. If we talk about Celtic, probably in about 1966. And it was a pretty momentous time for Celtic. You know, Jock Stein had come in. I didn't really pay too much attention at the time as an 8-year-old, but I distinctly remember the two games against Liverpool in the European Cup Winners' Cup, as it was at the time, 1966. We beat them 1-0 in Glasgow, and my father had gone to the return game at Anfield, and he came back in a very, very bad mood because we'd been beaten 2-0. But Bobby Lennox, I think it was, had scored a perfectly good goal with 10 minutes to go. And if that had been allowed, you know, we'd have gone through and we'd have been into the final. So I remember that game because they made such a commotion about getting robbed, etc. And that sort of stuck in my mind. And I asked if I could go to the next Celtic game. And the one that he took me to actually was an away game. And that was momentous because it's when we beat Motherwell at Fir Park at the last game of the season to win the first of the 9 in a row. And the reason why I remember that as an 8-year-old is not so much the momentous occasion, it was all these Celtic fans dancing on the roof and halfway up the floodlight, which I thought was really naughty. You know, that's what I seem to recall. But because of the circumstances around the game, that's sort of fixated in the mind of an 8-year-old, and I think that's really when I get hooked in this Celtic thing. And it's been the same way ever since. The following year, of course, you had the European Cup triumph, and the Celtic that I grew up with were the best in Scotland and amongst the best in Europe. And even to this day, I find it very difficult to settle for anything less. So Celtic sort of played a very big role in my upbringing from a very early age, and still does, of course. Music, you know, as well, that started to play an important part. My father was into music as well, but probably it was a few years later that I started getting into music. And the first groups I was into was the Rolling Stones and the Beatles, because my parents were into it. And I never bought any records until the 70s, but that's when I started getting interested in music.
And your first song is?
Well, the first song that I've chosen today is the Velvet Underground, Waiting for My Man. That was one of the first albums I bought, probably about 1970. It came out in 67, but I bought it in 1970, and I've liked Lou Reed and the Velvet Underground ever since. And I think this is one of their best tracks. I'm really into guitar music, and this is a very guitar-y recording, so that is my first track, and it's a great record.
That was Waiting for My Man by the Velvet Underground. What took you into the world of finance?
Well, that was completely by accident. I hadn't a clue what I wanted to do when I left school and was at university. I don't think anybody does. And I've got a very low boredom threshold, and I can't get involved in things that I don't like for any prolonged period of time. So I took time out and just sort of hoped that I would find something that I liked. And I actually applied for a job in the job centre in Shawlands as a stock exchange runner in Glasgow, just because it was a job paying a decent amount of money, and I wasn't really treating it as a career. Anyway, very quickly discovered that I liked it. It was very exciting, and I get into stocks and shares in a big way, and I decided through that quirk of fate, that quirk of luck, if you like, that's what I was going to do for a career, and that's what I've done ever since.
Your second song?
Well, the second song I've chosen today is probably one of my two favourite bands. It's the Rolling Stones. I've seen them at least 10 times in various parts of the world. Everybody knows the Rolling Stones. Everybody knows they've got umpteen good records. So I've chosen something that's slightly different today. I've chosen the Country Honk, which is from the Let It Bleed album, which I think came out about 1969. And as it says, it's a country version of Honky Tonk Woman, and it's a fantastic song. And it had to be on the 8 songs I'm giving you today.
That was the Rolling Stones in Country Honk. Who were your influences and your heroes?
Well, in a musical sense, presumably we're talking about. So the 2 records I've sort of given you so far, the Stones and the Velvet Underground, that was music I heard and liked. The first record that I actually bought, was by the sensational Alex Harvey Band. The album was Next. I've still got it. I don't know why I bought it, because I hadn't seen him before, but the guy was from Glasgow. He had a really Glaswegian voice, and he had this black and white t-shirt which looked a bit like a Celtic strip, I suppose. But anyway, I bought this record in 1972. That was probably the first record I ever bought, and it was fantastic. It had all these great tracks on it. Everyone's great, everyone's different, and I probably bought that record twice. I've still got the original one, though it's knackered. The track on it that I've chosen today is the longest one. It's The Faith Healer. I think it's track number 3 on the first side. Probably younger people listening to this won't know what a first side is. But it's a fantastic song with a fantastic bass introduction which lasts about 3 minutes. Brilliant song from a brilliant performer. I've seen him several times as well. And the famous gig, of course, he did at Celtic Park in 1975. The Who were top of the bill. Alex Harvey was second top. They blew the place apart. Fantastic gig. Fantastic album. Fantastic guy. Just one wee anecdote about Alex Harvey. I remember buying an egg and cress roll out the City Bakers in Union Street in 1978. And I bumped into Alex Harvey, who was past his peak by then. I asked him how he was doing and what he'd been up to. He said he'd been recording an album in Hamburg. The sensational Alex Harvey Band had broken up by then. And I said, "That's brilliant, can I get your autograph?" So I took my Bank of Scotland checkbook out my briefcase and he autographed the back of it, and it said, "Best wishes to David from Alex." And I put it in my big shoebox, which is full of gig tickets. I've still got that box, Celtic tickets, gig tickets. Anyway, the point in mentioning that little story there is that Alex Harvey died 2 weeks later from a heart attack. I think I'm correct in saying. I hope I've got the date right. I think I have. It was definitely coming out the City Bakers, though. That's a fact.
David, what are your earliest memories of going to Celtic Park?
Well, the earliest memories of going to Celtic Park, where I think I've already told you, the first game was an away game against Motherwell when we won the first. So the following season is when my father started sort of taking me to Celtic Park. In those days, you had to be there really early, and I mean like 1.5 hours, sometimes 2 hours before kick-off to get into the stand. So my father was never prepared to do that, or only very rarely. prepared to do that. So I ended up going with him to usually the Celtic end, because the jungle was deemed to be too mental, as they say. Although I was shoved down at the front on a good many occasions. But I can't remember the precise first game that I went to. It's all just a blur. The reason I remember the Motherwell game is because there was a hook, a memory hook there, the fans on the roof, up the floodlights. But remember, I'm still only 8 or 9, so I can't actually put a finger on the first game. I can remember specific games I was at. I was at the Vojvodina game, for example, which, if my memory serves me correct, was the semi-final of the European Cup, when they had beaten us. This is all from memory, so I hope I've got it right. They'd beaten us 1-0 away from home, and it was 1-0 in Glasgow. And that was when I was in the jungle at the front of the stand, them up the back with their cans of beer and their cigarettes, and Billy McNeil scored a header very near the end of the game. I can't remember the minute, but I was at that game, and that was 67. Then I was at most games, quite frankly, after that, because they did go all the time. Away games as well. We used to get planked in a cafe, for a pie and peas whilst they went to the pub and drove home with no seatbelts, fags and beer. That's what it was like in those days. So I can't remember the first game, but I can remember the Vojvodina game, 67. Then there was very many more after that. Fiorentina, a few years later, is one that I remember. 3-0, 3 great goals. But I've been to, I don't think there's been a year, any year, where I've missed more than 5 games at Celtic Park. Even when I was staying in Edinburgh and further aflung. So there's been so many. In fact, I'd like to know how many I've been to. I think it must be over 1,000. I must have been to over 1,000 Celtic games. And interestingly, I do know I've been to 6 Scotland games. So we don't want to go into that, although we could if you want to. I mean, why have the Lisbon Lions got so many caps, my friend?
Yeah.
Or so few caps?
So few caps.
I think we know the answer to that. But that's another story for another day.
Your fourth song?
Yeah, well, the fourth song is Rebel Rebel by David Bowie. By now, I'm sort of a teenager, and you're only allowed 8 songs in Desert Island Tims. So the one that was going to be in here was Alice Cooper, and the reason why Alice Cooper's in, because that was with my very first gig. Now, I think that was in 1971 at the Greens Playhouse before it became the Apollo. And again, there's a hook to that. That's why I remember it so clearly. 1, it was my first gig. 2, I was offered £8 for the ticket by a guy from London. That must be like 150 quid in today's money, which I turned down. And I went to the gig, and it was brilliant. All the bouncers were dressed up like Clockwork Orange guys, bowler hats, white outfits, Doc Martens, and the place was just a riot. Alice Cooper and his snake and his guillotine and $1 billion babies, etc. So I was going to put that in, but I'm not going to change it. It's Rebel Rebel that's in, and it's David Bowie. It's one of his best songs, fantastic. Another guitar song, and one of my favourite artists of all time, particularly in the 1970s. Rebel Rebel, number 4.
That was Rebel Rebel by David Bowie. What irritates you?
What irritates me? That's a difficult one. I have no idea what irritates me. In no particular order. As we're talking about football, bad results irritate me. The amount of money that football players, Celtic players, get paid irritate me. In the 1990s, imposters like DeCanio, Cadet and Hoydonk irritated the hell out of me. Football players that kiss badges then go for a few dollars more irritate me. I mean, revisionists to do with anything to do with the Celtic takeover irritate me. These type of things irritate me, but it doesn't interfere with me, and it doesn't dwell with me, and I don't bear too many grudges against too many people. But these are things that irritate me.
In life, what irritates you?
I have no idea what irritates me in life. Lazy people, lack of not doing your best in anything irritates me. I think if you do anything, no matter what it is, you should always try and do your best at it. And when I see talented young people, in particular, not trying their best, not giving it their best, that irritates me. The state of the economy irritates me. The blandness of politicians is very irritating.
Mm-hmm.
I think we've got a shocking political system in this country, and I just wish the people would get off their asses and vote for a decent political party that's got principle. I've voted Labour most of my life, but I don't think I could vote for the Labour Party just now, because it's basically the same as the Conservative Party. The Liberal Democrats have very few principles either, and getting in bed with the Conservative Party. I think that's enough irritations for the day.
Your fifth song?
The fifth song I've chosen takes us into the 1990s again, and keeping the irritation theme going. Rage Against the Machine were a pretty aggressive band in the 1990s, with very cutting edge guitar, rap style of music. And the track I've chosen is Bulls on Parade, which is one of my favourites. There's other ones I could have chosen, but the band's a favourite of mine, and that track's one of my favourites.
That was Rage Against the Machine, Bulls on Parade. How do you relax?
Well, I relax. I used to relax, when I had young children. They're all grown up now, so I don't really do much to relax other than, the only things I can tell you about relaxing are, the football is a major relaxation, a chance to get away from it all, and as well as going to Celtic games, I'll go to any football game, no matter where I am, no matter who it is, with one notable exception, of course.
Mm-hmm.
Without saying who that is, you know who it is. Other sports as well. I'll go and see tennis. I'll go and see rugby. My youngest son's, quite a good rugby player, so I go to rugby games.
Mm-hmm.
I'm a co-owner of the Glasgow Rocks, which is a professional basketball franchise based in Glasgow, opposite Celtic Park at the Emirates. I love the basketball. Professional basketball in the States is good as well. So that's all sporty stuff. I'm really into sport. I played a lot of sport in my time. Don't do it anymore. But that's a good way of relaxation. And of course, music. I go to gigs everywhere. Most of my friends are good friends are musicians.
Mm-hmm.
All sort of put together in the 1980s, although I've not got any other songs in here because that wouldn't be fair, but I go to lots of gigs, still do, so that's my obvious ways of relaxing.
Your sixth song?
The sixth song is The Clash. Nobody that was a teenager in the 1970s could not have been captivated by punk, which exploded onto the scene in 1976. And the three big bands that exploded onto the scene were The Clash, the Sex Pistols, and the Stranglers. I never really liked the Stranglers because they were too professional, too smooth, a wee bit older. They could play their instruments very well. That didn't help if you were a punk, So that counted them out. Then the Sex Pistols, I could have chosen the Sex Pistols, but they didn't last very long. I do remember I had a ticket to see the Sex Pistols, but in Glasgow, at the Apollo, I think it was, but Glasgow City Council withdrew the licence, and the gig did not take place. But I've still got the Anarchy in the UK, I think it is on EMI, before they get dumped. And moved on to Virgin. I've still got the 7-inch, which I'm told is worth a few bob, but I'm not going to be selling that. That's in my big shoebox as well. There's lots of interesting things in my big shoebox over the last 30 years. No shoes, lots of tickets, and exciting things. But the record I've chosen, The Clash, and The Clash were just fantastic. Glasgow City Council didn't cancel their gig. I did go to see them. They were absolutely fantastic. And the record I've chosen is the Train in Vain, which is on the London Calling album, a double album, and again is a fantastic track.
That was Train in Vain by the clash. So what does the future hold for you?
Well, again, I'm doing what I've always done, and that is I'm involved in the financial business, the board of a few companies. I got an investment management company, a management consultancy. That takes up all of my time. Spend a bit of time in Barcelona. I've got a house there, so I'm over there every month, and do a bit of business in the States as well, where my business partner is based. So, very busy, and definitely no slowing down. Say no more.
Your penultimate song?
The penultimate song is Shamrocks and Shenanigans by House of Pain. Again, this is a 1990s band, very aggressive in their presentation, and very good music, good presentation, and all that shamrock stuff and shillelaghs. I mean, you can't not like that. Mm-hmm. So the big hit they had at the time, was Jump Around. Every Celtic fan, no matter what their age is, knows that song. So it'd have been easy to choose that one. But this is another track from the album, Fine Malt Lyrics, and it's hip-hop rap rock song, and it's brilliant, and they are one of my favourite bands.
We've come to the part of the programme where I give you the complete works of the dandy and a copy of the Bible to take with you to your island. Would you like a copy of the Bible?
Yes, I would. Is that the correct answer? I would like a copy of the Bible, because it's actually a very good book, full of very good stories, and it would occupy you for ages. It's actually a brilliant book, if we're calling it a book rather than anything more substantive than that. But definitely that'd be a good book to have on a desert island. So I've got the Bible, and I'm happy about that. The dandy, I would take the dandy or not take the dandy. I was never into the dandy, the hornet, or any of those types of things. I was into Shoot, which was a football magazine. I wasn't into all these wee comics. But I'll take it anyway, because I get bored after reading the Bible.
Okay, well, pardon me.
Okay, sorry, we'll start that one again.
Which other book would you take, and why?
Well, it's very difficult to choose one book, because nobody usually has one favourite book. It's a bit like the records, very difficult to choose 8 records, even more difficult to choose one book. But I do have a favourite book that might be a bit unusual. The book is The Power and the Glory by Graham Greene. I've read it at least 4 times. The central character is a character called the Whiskey Priest, and it's a very Catholic book. Graham Greene was a Catholic convert, and the moral of the story is, and you can relate this to Cardinal Keith O'Brien if you like, if the messenger can be flawed, but as long as the message is not flawed, you're all right. The central character was a very flawed priest in The Power and the Glory, a whiskey priest, a priest that had sex, shock, horror. But underlying all of it was the fact that he was still a priest. He still had the power, and we still had the glory. Fantastic book. I recommend it to everybody. That's my serious book. If I'm allowed to sneak a second book in, it would probably be some sort of football book. But there's so many, I couldn't choose just now.
Since it's a football book, I might allow that. A luxury, something to make your life a bit more bearable. And remember, it can't be another human being, and it can't be a mobile phone. Okay, well, it has to be something practical then, something you can use for many different applications. So I would take a shotgun. That's what I would take, because I would take the shotgun if I get really bored after reading the Bible, if I get really bored after reading Matt McGlone's Emotionally Celtic. I could always shoot myself if nobody's rescued me, I could shoot myself. Then if I get hungry, I could shoot some bison or whatever was roaming the island, with my shotgun. So I have a dual application. So it would have to be a shotgun, and a double-barreled one, and with ammunition if you're allowed ammunition as well. If I ran out of ammunition, I could use it as a club. So I think that's pretty functional, pretty practical, and that would do me on this desert island. Fantastic. Your final song? Okay, my final song is Sunshine on Leith by the Proclaimers. I stayed in Edinburgh for 5 years. Again, some of my best friends are from Edinburgh. I had 3 children under 5 when I stayed in Edinburgh,
And when Celtic were playing away from home, I would go with my mate Kevin to Easter Road. So I do confess, a soft spot for Hibernian. Perhaps in a different life, I could have supported Hibernian, and the song has a connection with Hibernian. Anyway, it's a fantastic song in its own right. It's a very emotional song, and quite frankly, that just had to be in the list. So that's my final song, Sunshine on Leith by the Proclaimers.
David Lowe, thank you very much for being a Desert Island Tim.
No problem. Thank you very much for having me, Billy.